Subcommittee on Health, and we will now come to order. The chair now recognizes himself for 5 minutes for an opening statement. Good evening. Welcome to the first Joint Oversight and Investigations and Health Subcommittee field hearing examining President Biden's border crisis. It is important we convene here in Texas to shed light on the brutal and unsustainable conditions this president's administration has caused at our border. No other country in the world operates its borders in the manner this administration has chosen. According to a recent January 2023 Pew Research report, monthly encounters between U.S. Border Patrol agents and migrants attempting to cross into the United States at the U.S.-Mexico border remain at levels not seen in more than 2 decades. There were more than 206,000 reported encounters in November 2022, according to the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. For context, the highest number reported encounters in the previous administration was 132,856. The flood of migrants takes our customs and border agents away from stopping the cartels and narcotics from being trafficked into our country. Substances such as fentanyl and fentanyl analogs are killing Americans on a daily basis. In 2022 alone, the United States Drug Enforcement Agency seized over 379 million doses of fentanyl, which is enough to kill every American. We must pass the Halt Fentanyl Act. I have championed, along with Representative Latta, this bill would permanently schedule fentanyl analogs as Schedule 1. As one McAllen, Texas Border Patrol representative told reporters at Fox News, quote, "We joined to stop all these statistics. The fentanyl, the rapists, the murderers, the molesters, and those people are still out there. If I'm over here with 100 women and kids, that's going to take hours of my time and my partner's time," which of course would take them away from the border. While that is understandable that they would take that time, we want to help these vulnerable people. We must also address other issues at our southern border. Among those is the release of unaccompanied minor children. The HHS Office of Refugee Resettlement, ORR, is responsible for overseeing and safeguarding the thousands of unaccompanied children coming across the border. The administration's apathy to securing the borders has caused the number of children the ORR is charged with looking after to skyrocket from 1929 children in October of 2020 to 20,339 children in April of 2021. I've had serious concerns about what ORR considers to be appropriate background checks. In 2021, I visited emergency intake operations at Fort Bliss, Texas, and was both shocked and disappointed at what I learned there. There was no collaboration with law enforcement for background checks when vetting sponsors, and the public records check they were using were widely available internet search engines. As a September 2022 Inspector General study related to the operation at Fort Bliss solidified my concerns. The study concluded case managers lacked sufficient child welfare training and were ineffective at reuniting children with parents or sponsors. One interviewee informed the Inspector General there was a pervasive sense of despair among children at the facility who reportedly experienced distress, anxiety, and in some cases panic attacks. The Inspector General reported on instances of children physically harming themselves due to case manager negligence. Additionally, the Inspector General's report found that at Fort Bliss, ORR eliminated critical safeguards from the sponsor screening process, thereby potentially increasing children's risk of relief to unsafe sponsors. Further, the Inspector General found ORR supervisors had grown concerned that policy changes prioritized fast-tracking release of unaccompanied children to sponsors quickly, rather than taking the steps to, quote, vet sponsors and protect children from risks such as trafficking and exploitation. Supervisors also reported that inexperienced ORR case managers failed to consider children's significant history of abuse and neglect or whether sex offenders resided in the potential sponsor's household. The administration's border neglect is not limited to poisoning Americans and undercutting our Border Patrol agents, but the White House's immigration policies are essentially printing billions of dollars for Mexican cartels who have dramatically increased profits in their human trafficking business. Homeland Security investigations estimated the human trafficking industry generates about $13 billion today, up from $500 million in just 2018. According to Border Patrol sources, criminal organizations trafficking women, children, families, and single adults over the U.S.-Mexico border earned as much as $14 million a day in February 2021. The disastrous impacts of this country's health as a result of this administration's policies must stop. The committee This committee will shed light on the national emergency, even if the White House continues to ignore it. I appreciate the opportunity to hold this hearing tonight and look forward to working towards solutions to solve these issues. The chair now recognizes Mr. Cardenas for 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate this opportunity for us to be here in outside of the Capitol to have this field hearing. A lot of important issues we're going to hear about today, but I think equally important is that even though some of us might have some different perspectives on what the solutions are, I think that every member of this committee does care about this country deeply and certainly wants to make sure that we make good policy decisions so that we can improve the lives of every American citizen and every person in our country. I'm blessed to be a United States citizen, but equally blessed to be a United States congressman representing the community that I was born and raised in. But I'm also proud of my Mexican parents who raised me in this great country and taught me the values of being fair and treating people with dignity and respect. And I know that in our Energy and Commerce Committee, by and large, we do that by respecting the people who come before us, witnesses like yourselves. So I also want to thank all of you for being here today as witnesses to inform us of what's going on this part of our country so that we can be better prepared to make good policies. When it comes to our borders, one of the things that I'd like to point out, the information that I've received is that most of the fentanyl and other drugs that come through our borders actually come through ports of entry. They don't come on the backs of unfortunate migrants or people who are seeking asylum, who are trying to just make a better life or actually flee for their lives. So hopefully today we'll hear some more of the facts about what is ailing our country when it comes to why is it that we have so much illicit drugs on the streets of America. And one of the things that is for sure, if we didn't have a market, these drugs wouldn't be on the streets of our country. I truly do believe that every person deserves the support that they need should they find themselves addicted to any substance. And as I mentioned in one of the hearings just a couple of weeks ago in Washington, D.C., I asked permission from my son, who goes to NA meetings, that I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm one of the lucky ones that now that he has found help and now that he is trying to better his life, he tells me, Dad, every day that I'm sober is only one day. And tomorrow, I don't know. And I pray that I get the support and the love that I need. I'll tell you what, there's only one good thing that has come out of the fact that my son, at one time, was addicted to substances. And that is not a day goes by. Not a day goes by that we don't tell each other, I love you. I'm one of the lucky ones. We've heard testimony from parents, family members who love their children, love their family members, and they are no longer here with us. And one of the things that I want to point out, that yes, for people who are selling drugs, there must be punishment. Being punitive is definitely something that we need to make sure we do it and do it right. But for those individuals who unfortunately have found themselves addicted and cannot help themselves, we need to help them too. There are many prongs to the solution. There are many issues that face us as a nation. And pointing at one border is not going to get us out of our problems. It is only going to allow us to mask the truth. This is a multi-pronged problem that we have. It's not just one border. It's not just one foreign country. It is our issue as United States citizens to make sure that we look not only to solutions to our legislatures and our governments, but also to look into our own hearts and realize that we can do better. So on behalf of the people that I represent and the people who have chosen to send me to Congress, I really do appreciate this opportunity, not only to my fellow colleagues who made the trip here today, but also to all the people who are here and are listening and do want solutions for you, for your communities, for your families, for everybody in this great country. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now recognize Dr. Burgess on behalf of the Health Subcommittee for 5 minutes of an opening statement.
I thank the chair, and just echo Mr. Cardenas' thanks to all of our constituents for making the trip to be part of this field hearing. It is a very important hearing, and it is appropriate that we are doing it here in the Rio Grande Valley. So I'm no stranger to issues regarding border security, no stranger to problems surrounding the immigration difficulties and fentanyl. In addition to being a Texan, I practiced medicine for 3 decades before coming to Congress to work on these issues. The Office of Refugee Resettlement that Mr. Griffith addressed is part of our subcommittee's jurisdiction, and it is appropriate that we be here on the ground to see firsthand. And I will just share with you, it is work done by the O&I committee in previous Congresses that has actually made the Office of Refugee Resettlement stronger than what it was in 2014 when we were faced with a similar crisis with unaccompanied children coming across our border. All of us have worked on legislation to combat the misuse of opioids and to ensure the safety of unaccompanied children at the border. This past year, the Office of National Drug Control Policy released their annual report to Congress regarding high-intensity drug trafficking areas. Of 33 of these areas, the 3 located in Texas, Houston, South Texas, and West Texas, reported large disruptions of drug trafficking organizations as well as seizures. All of the Texas-based high-intensity drug areas, the drugs seized were worth over a combined $100 million. In addition, Customs and Border Protection reported approximately 7.8 thousand pounds of drug seizures in October of fiscal year 2023 and 9,000 pounds of drug seizures in November of fiscal year 2023. I mean, that's a lot of drugs. Just this past week, the Dallas Morning News reported that 3 teens tragically passed away from fentanyl-laced pills. 6 other teens were hospitalized from exposure to the substance in the city of Carrollton, Texas, in just next to the district that I represent. These 9 Texas students were all younger than 17 years of age. After the story broke and parents sat waiting to be notified as local authorities began to take action, but to all of us, this is unacceptable. It goes without saying that the problem has infiltrated our schools to the point where distribution of these substances happens unsupervised and oftentimes on social media apps. While our number one priority should be securing our border to protect the unchecked distribution of fentanyl, we must already accept the problem that is already here. The way in which we treat patients exposed to opioids and addicted to opioids has drastically evolved in the past decade. The scourge of fentanyl in our community is a completely different disease from what it was even 5 years ago. The last time the committee worked on the SUPPORT Act, which was signed into law in 2018, our focus was correctly on opioids and opiate addiction. But since then, the landscape has changed drastically to include patients dying from only 3 milligrams of fentanyl. Basically, we're talking about a pencil tip. Patients exposed to the high-potency substance often suffer from other addictions and have severe mental and behavioral health problems. And I appreciate Mr. Cardenas sharing his story with us as he knows these patients and treating these patients can be complex clinical situations. Our committee, our focus, should remain on examining federal laws that prevent patient access to care. And one of those is the IMD exclusion, the Institute for Mental Disease exclusion, which we addressed in the reconciliation bill. Unfortunately, it wasn't an amendment was not allowed to go forward. But this prohibits Medicaid payments to residential mental health facilities with more than 16 beds. We actually can improve our track record by addressing that deficiency. We should focus on bolstering our workforce and supporting our providers to ensure that mental health and substance use patients have access to personalized care and medicine. So our border is important. Our border agents deserve our respect, and I hope that with this hearing today, we can convey some of that respect. And Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back to you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for yielding back. Now recognize Mr. Vesey for 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And I think all of us know that Texas has been hit hard by the opioid crisis. 1 in 4 Texans have experienced an opioid overdose or know someone who has. And as it was just pointed out, in North Texas recently, we experienced a string of similar deaths, including in high school-aged children. Because of this, I joined my colleagues in taking action to address the opioid crisis and give much relief to people here in my home state of Texas. Last Congress, we passed a bipartisan mental health and substance abuse use treatment package, H.R. 7666. That is Restoring Hope for Mental Health and Well-Being Act of 2022, and it was later signed into law as part of the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2023. This historic piece of legislation ensures that medical practitioners are prepared to identify and treat substance abuse disorders and increase access to medication-assisted treatment. It also authorizes billions of dollars in public health programs that address the mental health and substance abuse crisis, including both the Substance Use Prevention, Treatment, and Recovery Services Block Grant and state opioid response grants. We should be focusing heavily on increasing access to prevention, treatment, and recovery for those struggling with substance abuse. I would welcome a field hearing in Texas that explored bipartisan solutions to this public health crisis. We were able to work together on bipartisan solutions last Congress when Democrats were in the majority. Instead, we're here discussing things like the militarization of our border. We continue to hear misinformation that falsely links illegal immigration with a surge in fentanyl trafficking, and that's simply not reality. We know for a fact, even from very conservative organizations like the Cato Institute, which was founded by the Koch brothers, we know that a majority of fentanyl-related convictions do not involve undocumented immigrants. In 2021, the number of U.S. citizens convicted of fentanyl was 10 times higher than the convictions of undocumented immigrants for the same offense. We also know that a majority of fentanyl smuggled illegally comes through legal ports of entry and not at illegal crossings. Instead of acknowledging these facts and taking constructive action to address the opioid crisis, Republicans are using misinformation to encourage excessive incarcerations, which we should have learned something from the 90s, detentions, and deportations at the border. This field hearing today is nothing more than a political stunt targeted at the extreme elements of the Republican Party. Enough of the misinformation. We need a facts-based approach to the humanitarian crisis at the border. President Biden has taken steps to streamline the immigration process by expanding pathways for safe, orderly, and humane migration without compromising border security. This has included expanding the parole process for immigrants from certain countries, expanding refugee resettlement opportunities, and modernizing appointment processes at U.S. ports of entry. Such efforts are already showing signs of success. January 2023 saw some of the lowest levels of monthly border encounters since February 2021. In contrast, Republicans seem more interested in political stunts like this one than working with the president and Democrats on a humane and lawful approach to border security and immigration, like passing a comprehensive immigration reform bill. For example, congressional Republicans have repeatedly voted against bills funding security at the border, including most recently a $4.9 billion supplemental funding request in December 2022. It's clear that Republicans are more interested in politics than rolling up their sleeves and doing the hard work to address this humanitarian crisis at the border and fixing our broken immigration system and doing something about this fentanyl problem that is plaguing all of our communities. Sadly, we have had an opportunity to talk about evidence-based approach to address substance abuse use, but we were denied testimony from an expert witness who has worked directly with communities affected by fentanyl along the border. This is a huge missed opportunity that really could have made a difference in the lives of people in the surrounding communities. If Republicans are serious about addressing illicit fentanyl, I would hope that they would work with us on real solutions rather than dodge opportunities from witnesses with firsthand experience. I look forward to working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to address the opioid crisis in our communities and this humanitarian crisis at our border. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.